So again, we're going to get started today talking about the warning signs, the concerns, when we're visiting with our parents, what to be on the lookout for, and then of course options. And we're going to wrap up with how to really deal with the financial issues and the legal issues, as well as, wait, okay, we got somebody else. Okay, good. So that we can get into the full discussion so you get the whole picture, okay? So starting off, what we're going to talk about initially is when a child goes to visit mom, and it could be dad, it could be an aunt, it could be an uncle, it's some loved one, somebody you're visiting with. What are you looking out for? What are the warning signs where it may be time to get involved, start to consider bringing in help, or perhaps consider other residential options? And there's two main areas of concern. The first one is going to be physically. You're looking out to see how, for example, mom is doing physically, but you're also looking to see how she's doing mentally, all right? Now, on the physical side, what I mean by that is what's called the activities of daily living. Those are her functional abilities. It's what she is able to do on her own and not able to do on her own. And they are necessary for basic functional living, all right? If there's a deficit here, meaning if there's a need for help with an ADL or an activity of daily living, then perhaps it's time for home care on one side of the spectrum, or all the way on the other end of the spectrum, what's called nursing home care. And I'll get into that later. But again, the first thing you're looking out for is physical. How is she doing with her activities of daily living, which I'll define a little further in just a moment. The other thing that we're looking out for as we're observing, interacting, is how is mom doing mentally? How are her cognitive skills? And that has to do with what's called the instrumental activities of daily living. So this is capacity. How is mom doing mentally? These activities, the IADLs, the instrumental activities of daily living, those are the activities that allow mom to live independently, all right? They often shed light or let you see as to whether or not there's concerns about mental capacity, the various dementias and Alzheimer's and so forth. If there's a deficit here again, yes, you could be looking at home health care, you could be looking at the extreme end of nursing home, but maybe it's just supervision in the beginning. Maybe it's just prompting in the beginning to help with different things. And again, I'll get into that a little bit more. So again, we go and visit our folks. We're looking to see how they're doing physically. We're looking to see how they're doing mentally. Physically, as I've shared, it's the functional activities of daily living. And what are they? Well, the ADLs are literally everything we do every day. It's everything we do in the morning, all right, for example. So let me break that down for you. It's our walking, it's our bathing, it's toileting, it's dressing, it's eating, and it's transferring, which is getting up and out of bed. So for example, in the morning, you get up and out of bed, that's transferring. You walk to the bathroom, that's walking. You use the bathroom, that's toileting. You bathe or shower, right? That's another one. You groom, then you get dressed, and then you eat. So if we're able to do all of those things independently, then we don't have any functional deficits. We don't have any need for assistance with our ADLs. But as our folks and loved ones get older, perhaps there's a cane, perhaps there's a walker like you see on the screen there, perhaps there's a wheelchair. And then what? All right, so that's what we're getting into. Now, what exactly is an instrumental activity of daily living? Well, the IADLs are, not trying to be facetious here, but they're not the ADLs. They are those that are instrumental to those bigger functional activities, all right? So for example, an instrumental activity of daily living is going to be cooking. It's going to be cleaning. It's going to be transportation. Are they driving themselves, or are they taking the bus appropriately? Are they doing their laundry? Are they actually paying their bills and handling their finances? Are they able to go shopping and have food for themselves? I have a rather extreme picture here on the screen, but quite honestly, for some families, it's not extreme. It's just the way mom lives, or the way dad lives, or your aunt or uncle lives. Cooking, cleaning, paying your bills on time, food in the refrigerator, lining up your medications appropriately. All of those are instrumental to being able to handle the activities of daily living. And as I shared in the beginning, this is where a person's capacity comes to light, all right? Doesn't necessarily mean there's a diagnosis, doesn't necessarily mean there's dementia. It could just be personality type, but it can open the door again and let us see as to whether or not that's a possibility. Definitely time to start having discussions with your loved one if you see any deficits in the ADLs or the IADLs, because you're concerned and you want to make sure that things are being taken care of and they're not harming themselves or in jeopardy of harming themselves, okay? Now, over here at Tully Law Group, we use what we call an elder care continuum. And there's a portion of it right here. I'll show you more later as we move on. So on the left side of the screen, you'll see the gentleman standing upright, right? There's no cane, there's no assistance. There is no functional limitations. And it's also how I'm demonstrating visually that there's no cognitive limitations either, okay? All the way on the left side. But then over time, or perhaps over some type of trauma or stroke or something like that, we start to progress towards the right, okay? The next step is going to be some type of limited function. Yes, it could be physical with an ADL, or perhaps it's not paying your bills or letting the mail pile up or no food in the refrigerator, getting lost when you're driving. That is the first step. That's the limited function physically or cognitively. Another step to the right, perhaps there's more limited function, not preparing food or leaving the stove on, getting into accidents with the car, or perhaps on the physical side, it's holding on to the railings as you go up the stairs, or holding on to the chairs or the walls as you walk. There are certain obvious things that we can see that show a decline in the physical or the cognitive, okay? Another step is even more limited function demonstrated with the scooter there. And then ultimately all the way to the right, we've got significant limited function where of course greater assistance is going to be needed, okay? Now, the big picture, the overview is as our parents are aging and getting older, there's two types of care, two types of issues that I like to talk about. I always like to share with our viewers here the big picture on elder care, that as we get older, we can have medical issues that arise. So mom or dad going to a doctor or a hospital or a rehabilitation center, those are all medical needs, all right? Not necessarily dealing with the ADLs and not dealing with the IADLs, right? They're not functional concerns. They're not capacity concerns. They're medical concerns. And those medical concerns, gratefully, are covered by our medical insurance, whether it's Medicare or a supplemental policy or a secondary policy. That type of medical care, doctors, hospitals, rehab centers, is covered under those payment structures. But on the other side of that coin, there is what we call long-term care. And long-term care is going to be, and this is where it gets a little fuzzy, it's really in New York, long-term care is all about the functional limitations, those activities of daily living. Now, not to take away from the cognitive decline and assistance with the instrumental activities of daily living, but when we're talking about long-term care in New York, yes, it covers the physical, functional, as well as the cognitive. But as we talk about in our world of Medicaid, unfortunately, these days, and that's coming to an end gratefully, it's just about the functional, okay? So what can a person do on their own? What can't a person do on their own? Do they need assistance walking? Do they need assistance bathing? Can they live independently in that regard? So that, in New York Medicaid parlance, is long-term care. Now, gratefully, as I shared, New York Medicaid is going through some changes, and there's a new law that's coming out January 1st of 22. The negative side of the new law in regard to community-based services, community-based Medicaid, is there's going to be a look-back period, and there's going to be penalties associated with transfers and protection steps. If you want to know more about the new Medicaid law, I've got it all on our website. If you go to tullyelderlaw.com, we have a video tab and we get into webinars. I've been doing webinars on all of these topics and all the Medicaid changes for the last year. So you can learn more in depth there about the Medicaid changes. But the reason I'm bringing that up now is one of the good things in the new law that's coming in is New York State Medicaid is finally acknowledging the capacity side, all right? They're finally acknowledging somebody's cognitive abilities can be a need for in-home assistance to be paid for by Medicaid. So come the new law implementation in January, we can have a physical component, which is going to be our ADLs, or we can have a supervision component, which is going to be the cognitive and the IADLs, okay? So again, for today's purposes, it's everything, every type of aspect of assistance, physical and cognitive, all right? Hopefully that wasn't too much of a rabbit hole for you. All right, so big picture again, what is long-term care? It's all the services and supports to meet a person's care needs, all right? And we're going to start to get into where that can happen, all right? So to get back to our continuum, you'll see now we've added a new layer dealing with really our residential options, which we'll talk about. First and foremost, living on your own, you're at home, right? No decline with cognitive abilities, no decline with our functional abilities. We're living at home all the way on the left on our own. But then perhaps there's a decline, okay? Now, long-term care does not follow the same path. Aging and decline in physical and cognitive abilities are not the same for everybody at all. But there is a general path that people follow. And there's a general long-term care path. For example, when it's what I call the informal and formal levels of care. So if you notice a spouse or a parent needing assistance, what do? You help. If you're a child, you help. So there's going to be an informal stage in the beginning where the family does all that they can to help, whether it's running errands, picking up food, helping with the dishes, helping with paying the bills, helping with the medication, helping them walk. It gets a little more difficult, I've heard from family members, of course, when you start talking about bathing and toileting issues, but families help each other with that sometimes. So family helps first. That's the informal side of it. Then it may become a little too much, or the family's working, they're not local, so maybe there's a neighbor that can stop in. Maybe there's somebody from church or the synagogue that can stop in. Again, still informal. The next step after that is what most families do, in that they pay somebody cash to come by and help with these activities of daily living. Now, the paying cash, it's not the best way to go. There can be tax issues. There could be liability issues. You're not going to have background checks. You're not going to have insurance. You're not going to have bonding. You're not going to have a backup if that person is ill or on vacation. So dealing with it that way happens, and we all know it does, but it's not the ideal way to go. So again, that's still informal. But then comes with the realization that, I need to hire somebody, okay? And there's different levels of who to hire. The first step is a companion. Companion agencies are those that are private pay. You're looking anywhere from $20, $25 an hour for a companion to come in. That companion is there primarily for the IADLs, all right? They're there for the supervision. They're there for the company, to be with the person, to avoid isolation, to assist with some housekeeping and cooking, all right? They're not there for the activities of daily living. So the next stage is, after the companion is able to help or not able to help, then we get into an actual home care aide, where a personal care aide can come in. Now, their job is to help with the activities of daily living, literally help with the walking, help with the bathing and the toileting and the dressing. So again, things progress. And once we're working with a companion agency or a home care agency, yeah, that's formal care. The costs, and I'll get into it a little bit, but you're looking at 20 to 30, $35 an hour for that level of in-home care, okay? And if we get back to our continuum, right there in the middle, we're home with more assistance. Perhaps it's two people, maybe it's a split shift. It's somebody in the morning, it's somebody in the afternoon. Then perhaps an assisted living, and ultimately perhaps a nursing facility. So the big picture is, it can be, the continuum is home on our own to a nursing facility. Doesn't mean everybody goes to a nursing facility, because they don't. In fact, most people want to stay in the community, as it's called. So let's get into that next picture there. So to further define, where can we receive long-term care? So if you do conclude that it's time for mom, and if you have a discussion or respectful, dignified discussion with your parent that it's time for some type of assistance, where can you receive that assistance? What are the options? All right. And certainly there's their home. Okay. And that is what most people want. Initially and ideally, people want to stay in their home. Sometimes it's not practical. We've had children contact us in New York where their parents are in other states, and it's about getting them back here to New York so they can be closer and help and take care of them and oversee the care. So sometimes you're renting an apartment, right? Or maybe it's a child's home. Not always the situation, not always for every family, but quite often a parent can move in with a child, or a child can move in with a parent. So the first option when it comes to residential choices is in the community, but within somebody's home or their own home, okay? Now, the next option is what's called an adult care facility. That's what New York State calls it. What that means is it's an adult home or an assisted living, okay? And the proper definition of an adult care facility is it's either temporary, all right, because it can be just a month or two respite it's a break in time, or it can be long-term. It's not going to be medical care, all right? This is residential care services for adults so that they can live independently or live as independently as possible, all right? And it's those that with some type of medical, or forgive me, some type of physical or mental limitation, okay? It can be due to aging, it can be due to illness, but this is where somebody's going to get the assistance with the ADLs on the functional physical side and receive assistance with the IADLs, all right, which is going to be on the cognitive mental side. This is not about the medical care, okay? Now, remember, a few slides ago, I shared medical care, long-term care. So this is long-term care, not medical. Then we have as an option what's called a nursing facility. And we know what those are. That's the nursing homes. It's where people don't necessarily want to go unless they have to. Here is where somebody will receive assistance with both the long-term care issues and the medical concerns, okay? Now, I'm going to add in what's called a CCRC. I don't have that on the graphic I shared, the Continuum, but I'm going to talk about it for a moment because there's a couple of them on Long Island now. A continuing care retirement community, or again, CCRC. It's a type of retirement community to handle attempts to handle everything on one campus. So it can be independent living, it can be assisted living, and it can be the skilled nursing care. Now, again, there's one out in Port Jeff, there's one out in the Great Neck area. They're not for everybody. They are costly to get into, and you have monthly costs as well. We'll get into the costs a little bit more later. But they are for some people. If you want to be able to sell your home on Long Island, move to one campus where you can stay independent living, to assisted living, like we shared, assistance with the ADLs and the IADLs, or even to nursing home, all within not necessarily one building, but one campus. Okay, so those are the various options. If you have any questions about those, please let me know. Now, going back to our continuum, all right, you see the cost? All right, so we added another level there. This is our full continuum. So when somebody's living on their own independently, yes, of course, you've got living expenses, but the care expense is zero because they're on their own, they're independent. And then somebody coming in, again, a family member coming in, they're not necessarily charging, but there's still a value to that. Perhaps they're missing work. Perhaps that they're paying for babysitters for their own kids. So there's always a cost to care. But you'll see in the progression of the continuum that each level of care from informal to formal is going to require more funds. It gets more and more expensive. Again, as you go from informal to formal, it gets more expensive. As you go from long-term care to medical, it gets more expensive, okay? The bottom line there is, how do we pay for that? So just to kind of summarize where we are, you visit with your mom, You're looking at the physical. How is she doing with the ADLs? You're looking at the capacity, the mental. How's conversation? What's the kitchen look like? Is she paying the bills? What does the the medicine cabinet look like? You want to observe all those things. And perhaps at some point there's time for a respectful discussion. And by the way, I've done webinars on what to look out for specifically when you actually visit with your mom or dad. And I've done webinars on how to have conversations. We've done a lot of social media posts on that as well. So our Facebook and our website have a lot of information on what we're talking about here. But what you're talking about is having the conversation. Is it time to get some help in the house? Is it time to consider another residential location? Not always a welcome conversation. It's one that you want to be respectful. It's one where you want it to be about the parent. It's not about the child saying, I need this, I want that. It's about what's best for mom or dad. And it may take a couple of conversations. You're not going to resolve this in a half hour on your lunch break. It's just not going to happen. You want it to be timed appropriately. You want it to be about your loved one, and you want it to be respectful. So as those conversations are happening, we also have to start considering, how are we paying for it? What are the other concerns? And to be very frank, those are the concerns that we deal with all the time. Here at our law practice, our elder care law practice, we deal with the legal and the financial issues. But what's very unique about us is we also deal about all the care issues I've been talking about. So a typical law firm isn't addressing all those ADL and IDL issues. They're not necessarily dealing with where should a person live. We do that. We have our care coordinators on staff. We work hand in hand with our attorneys, and we help the families as they age through that entire continuum. Okay. But one of the biggest concerns that we have, and let me list them for you, is if mom or dad has a home and we know that there's a care need, that we have to pay for care, how are we going to protect that home? That happens a lot. People come in saying, I've been told I have to use a trust. I have to protect the house. So that's a real concern people have as mom is aging, and as you're talking about care needs, and as you're talking about different residential options. Also, the same conversation, how do we protect mom and dad's money? All right. In addition, mom and dad themselves are saying, how do I protect my lifetime savings? How, as a husband or a wife, you're saying, I don't want to spend all the money on myself and my care. I want their money to be available to help my husband or my wife if they survive me. I want some money to be available for my children as an inheritance. We worked our whole lives. I don't want to spend it all on something that I don't necessarily have to. So how do we protect the house? How do we protect the financial accounts? How do we pay for care? It's expensive. I said $25 an hour earlier. It can get much higher. And that's just in the community. So how do you pay for that care? And ultimately, how do you help your loved one get the best care? You don't want shoddy care. You don't want unprofessional care. You don't want an untrained person. You don't want a lack of accountability. You want your loved one to get the best care possible. Why are all these things important? Because if we don't address them one by one, then guess what? There's going to be consequences, okay? If we don't protect the home, and if we enter the world of long-term care and we enter the world of Medicaid to pay for that care, Medicaid's going to go after that house at some point. There can be a lien placed on the property. They can recover against a person's estate. You might be forced to sell it at a fire sale and you get lower than it's actually worth. So you want to, in advance of the need, protect the house so you can avoid these consequences, or at least minimize the risk of these consequences. With the financial accounts, if you don't protect them, guess what you're doing? You're spending it on the care. Assisted livings can be $5,000 to $10,000 a month. Nursing homes can be $15,000 to $20,000 a month. You want that money sheltered and protected, yes, again, for a surviving spouse, yes, again, possibly for children as an inheritance, but you also want to protect it for your loved one that needs the care. You don't want to spend it all, run out of it, and have nothing left for a future expense, okay? So you always have to have some reserves. Paying for the care. As I just shared, home care can be $10, $11, $12,000. Nursing facilities can be 20 grand. Could you imagine, $100,000 a year in care, or $250,000 in care expenses each year? I know people that are paying that. We have clients that come to us that choose to pay for that care privately, and so be it. We're able to help them with their care needs. We're able to help their loved one get the best care possible. We're able to help them with their estate planning needs, but they're not worried about asset protection, and they're not thinking about Medicaid as a government program. But that's not the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people are saying, I got $300,000, $400,000 in the bank, and I've got a house. How do I preserve that? Because it's going to go super fast if I have to pay for it myself. Finally, the consequence of your loved one not getting the best care is, unfortunately, there can be frailty, there can be a decline, and ultimately there can be a care crisis, meaning we need a nursing home and we needed it yesterday. It is always one of the most important things I can share with clients is that dealing with long-term care is something that should be done in advance proactively. You always want to avoid a crisis. If a crisis strikes, and if you've caught these webinars before or you've sat with me before, you know I say this. When there's a crisis, you have less options, you got more stress, and you've got more expense. When you plan in advance and you actually have the ability to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, there's less stress, there's less cost, and you're going to have some options. All right. So avoiding the crisis by planning in advance while mom or dad still has appropriate physical and mental capacity, that's the way to do it. That's how you handle these types of issues. All right. But let's say your loved one does need long-term care. How exactly do you pay for it? Well, there's three ways to do that. Okay. The first way to pay for long-term care, as I'm sharing, is just write a check. You can pay a home care agency, you can pay a nursing home, absolutely. You have to look at the big picture, right? Are there sufficient funds to pay for this care long term? Will there be funds left over for future expenses? Will there be funds available for a surviving spouse or a child in need? So using cash is certainly an option. It's just not chosen by most people. The second way to pay for long-term care is with what's called long-term care insurance. It is a separate private health insurance policy that can be purchased. It's like life insurance. The older you are and the different healthcare conditions existing, the more expensive it's going to be. Most folks do not have long-term care insurance, and those that do, they did not actually purchase a policy, usually, that covers the full risk. For example, perhaps you have a long-term care insurance policy that provides $200 a day of care. $200 a day can work for home care, but $200 a day in a nursing home, it's not that good. A nursing home, again, is $500 to $700 a day. So long-term care insurance, very valuable, very expensive, but if you have it and it's sufficient, great, that's good. The third way to pay for long-term care, and it's what most people do, is Medicaid. Medicare, as I shared earlier, is about your medical needs, your doctors, your hospitals, your nursing, your rehab facilities. But Medicaid, on the other hand, is going to be there for your long-term care expenses. Now, you don't just get Medicaid. You hit 65, you get Medicare Part A, right? You still have to sign up for B and pay for B and so forth. Medicaid is very different. Medicaid is a program that you have to become eligible for, and I'll talk about that briefly because we only have a little bit more time. Medicaid itself has two programs. And if you want to learn more about Medicaid, again, go to tullyelderlaw.com, click on the video tab, and then the sub tab for webinars. We've got plenty of past webinars, 30, 45 minutes, talking about Medicare benefits, talking about asset protection and trusts and so forth. So you can catch all that there. But for our purposes today, in talking about mom and residential options, we have a community Medicaid program and we have a chronic care Medicaid program. First, community Medicaid. That will actually pay for a personal care aide to come into the house and help mom with the ADLs. We have what's called an assisted living program. not necessarily an assisted living facility. Okay, I say here assisted living program. That is a program in New York where Medicaid, community Medicaid, will actually pay for the assisted living. There's only about 9 of them on Long Island. It's not a very popular program, unfortunately. I shouldn't put it that way. It's very popular, and there's wait lists. It's just not a very common program. There's not a lot of facilities that have or participate in the assisted living program. New York State is rolling out more beds and more facilities that provide that because it's very valuable. Assisted living is very expensive. And to have a Medicaid benefit available to pay for it, again, it's a great thing and it's very valuable. So that is available under community Medicaid. Community Medicaid can also pay for adult daycare. We lost this option during the pandemic, but adult daycare is very valuable. It could be a social model and there could be a medical model. The towns have their own senior centers and day programs. So you can look into that. And yes, it can be paid for by Medicaid. Last point about community Medicaid, and I referenced this a little while ago, is it's undergoing big changes. Historically, community Medicaid has never had a look-back period. There hasn't been waiting periods. There hasn't been penalties. I've been practicing elder law since 1998. And what we've always been able to do is protect a house in September, protect 200 grand in September, and be eligible for community Medicaid in October. So we were always able to do that within a month. That's changing. The governor signed a law back in April of 20 to create a 30-month look-back period for home care, not to be confused with a 60-month look-back for nursing homes. Okay, I'll talk about that in the next column briefly. Big point here is if you have a loved one with functional limitations, where they need assistance in the community, now is the exact time to get that plan in place to protect those assets and try to get that community Medicaid application submitted before the end of 2021. If you have questions about that, or if you're in that circumstance, just call us, all right? 631-424-2800. Call us. You can set up a free consultation with me in person or on Zoom, and we can cover those issues for your loved one, okay? Now, the other Medicaid program is called chronic care Medicaid. That's the nursing home, okay? As I just mentioned, that has that 5-year look back. It has transfer penalties. It's a whole nother animal than community Medicaid. But if a nursing home is necessary, there's different ways to work on eligibility. There's spousal transfers. There's what's called exempt transfers. And then ultimately, we have a crisis protection strategy called a promissory note and gift strategy, which can be utilized as well, okay? Now, Medicaid itself is about 3 things. Medicaid eligibility, all right? It's about an applicant's assets, it's about an applicant's income, and it's about an applicant's health. What is their care level? How much care do they need? So again, you don't just walk into the Medicaid office and get a Medicaid card. You have to establish eligibility on the asset side, the income side, and on the care side, the health side, okay? You have to be eligible in all 3 areas there. When we come in to help clients, we try to break it down as easy as possible. There's legal, financial, and care issues. When we're helping a client on the legal front, our goal is going to be to protect as much of the assets as possible. On the financial side, if we're talking about mom needing a change in residential, are we going ALP? Are we going nursing home? Are we going to try to keep mom at home and bring an aid in to assist her? Financially, we want to get Medicaid to pay. Now, again, what makes us unique is we focus on the care issues as well. And what do we want to do? We want to make sure that your loved one gets the best care possible. So between the attorneys and the paralegals and the advocates, that's one of our huge focus points. Tools, for example, and again, I'm not getting into this now, I'm just kind of sharing with you the highlights, more information on other webinars. When we talk about protecting assets, we're going to utilize what's called an irrevocable trust. Not always, but most of the time. We're also going to want to make sure we have a durable, modified power of attorney in place. I've done whole webinars just on powers of attorney. Maybe the most important document there, especially if there's a loss of mental capacity. It's where a person can appoint somebody to help with their legal and financial matters, okay? If it doesn't exist, Or if you have one and it's not good enough, meaning it's missing language, then the family can be forced into what's called a guardianship. And that is something you don't ever want to go through. So having a proper, comprehensive, durable, modified power of attorney is a must, okay? On the financial front, we want Medicaid to pay, so we're looking at community Medicaid and we're looking at chronic care Medicaid to help achieve your loved one getting the best care possible, whether they choose to stay at home or an apartment or an assisted living or in a nursing facility. Our elder care coordinators can help you do that, okay? So again, protect the assets, get Medicaid to pay for the care as soon as we can, and help your loved one get the best care possible. As I've shared, as I start to wrap up, a traditional elder law firm, and there's some really good ones out there, they'll do the legal work and the financial work all day long. They'll protect the assets, they'll do the right powers of attorney, they'll get Medicaid to pay. That's what we do as well. We can do that in our sleep. It's the care side, again, that's become more complicated throughout the years. Medicaid has gotten more and more complicated, if you will, in dealing with the care issues, the assessments, the scrutiny during the assessments, the reduction of hours when we need more hours. It's again become more and more difficult on the care side. Traditional elder law firms don't necessarily deal with that, all right? And it leaves the family in need in that regard. They're handling that on their own. Now, what we do is what we call elder care law, elder law, but with the care, okay? So we are helping the families deal with the legal and the financial and the care. When we put that together, it's what we call a life care plan. The life care plan, again, is legal, all the asset protection. It's going to be the financial, which is going to be getting Medicaid to pay, and we're going to help your loved one get the best care possible, okay? When we're able to do this in time, not always in a crisis, because we lose options, right, when there's a crisis, on the legal front, we're able to protect the assets. We can avoid probate. We can avoid that guardianship I just mentioned. We can have backup decision makers if there's a decline in capacity. On the financial front, we're going to be able to get the care paid for and protect, hopefully, the house and financial accounts. On the care side, we're able to help our clients and their families achieve peace of mind. There'll be some stability. There'll be answers. There'll be support. There's a team to help. Dignity, quality of life. One of the biggest issues we try to convey to our clients is stay ahead of the curve when it comes to these elder care issues. There will always be change, and we can help manage that change because we typically know what's around the corner. And we can help manage the transitions that are going to be coming, okay? So bear this in mind. It's not for you to memorize everything that I laid out there. It's to share with you that there are options and there are people that can help, all right? This is what we do. We've been doing it since 1998, nearly 24 years, and we can help your family. We can help your loved ones to protect the assets, to get Medicaid to pay, and to help your loved one get the best care possible, all right? If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help. If you want to email me directly, Brian, B-R-I-A-N, at Tully, T-U-L-L-Y, elderlaw.com. It's a free consultation, in person or Zoom. Phone number is 631-424-2800, or you can look us up on Facebook. I barely Instagram, but you can look us up on Facebook, Tully Law PC. So thank you. Let's see if we have any questions. All right. Nope, we're good. We're good on the questions. Any Q&A? No, we're good. All right. Thank you, everybody. It was a real pleasure getting together again. Next Wednesday is the third Wednesday or second Wednesday. Third Wednesday of the month, but because September has 5, we're only doing, this is considered our first Wednesday. So next Wednesday is going to be our Q&A. All right, so feel free to register for that and submit your questions, and I'll be happy to help answer any questions you have. You're very welcome. Thank you. Have a great day. Be safe.